All right, I know. I've been gone a while. I've been a busy person. And yes, I'm drinking water now instead of Coke. Now, it's fine. It actually has nothing to do with Coke. Just water's healthier, right? Now, there's a lot going on strategically in the world. Uh, Biden's bombing Syria, saying that he's attacking Iranians and they've only killed Syrians. Who knows what that's about? We don't know. Right now, the Chinese are running the show. And the Chinese, their main tactic has been basically undermine the institutions of the United States. And it's not that they necessarily input a Chinese spy in who does something and does the bidding and pushes things that are destructive. It's that they empower people who hire the type of people for ideological reasons and watch the quality naturally degrade. They're not they're weak to this as well. I mean, the communists they're incompetent. That's why they can't feed people. I mean, not just to mention that the system itself doesn't work. But you know, if communism was the answer, they wouldn't be bothering trying to undermine capitalism. But occasionally you see something really glaring that perhaps people aren't talking about in a way that's more of the macro context of what's been going on over the last probably 30 years. And a prime example of that is this video right here. So, if you haven't seen this, this was, I think, Fort Drum. And it's a shoot house video of close quarter combat training for the 10th Mountain Division. Now, anyone who's familiar at all with close quarters tactics can see blatantly there's major issues with this. This looks like when you see veterans react to like third world country military training videos. Like this is amateur hour. Everybody here should know that this is not the way to conduct training safely, and they actually are putting themselves not only in danger in training, but they're putting themselves in danger in combat by doing things the way they're doing here. And the disturbing thing is not that some 18, 19-year-old grunt who doesn't know shit, who just listens to his commanders, is doing this. That's not what the problem is. Like, I can't expect them to know. They're coming up from high school, they're playing Call of Duty, they really don't know. They're going to do things the way they're told to do things. But the fact that NCOs, officers, this doesn't happen overnight. This isn't, we had a bad training session where we flagged a bunch of people. This is fundamentally awful training. You're actually teaching these guys how to excuse me, lose a firefight and get killed. That's what you're teaching these guys to do. And this guy here, who you see, I believe he's like the sergeant or the officer. He's just standing there. They're just opening the doors casually. They're not simulating anything. They're making a lot of noise and flagging each other in a concrete room. That's what they're doing. If this were actual close quarters combat, a well-trained team would wipe the floor with them. None of these guys are getting out alive. And even if they're fighting untrained enemies, they're going to be losing guys because this is just that bad. Some people might not know because they get most of their exposure to close quarters combat tactics training from Hollywood, and I'm by no means an expert or some sort of close combat guru. I'm not. I've had basic ROTC training. I've actually never been in a shoot house, but I do know things like don't flag people. This is the reason why when I did the training I did. Can I pause this? Whatever. If it starts, it starts. we did it with either basically simulated weapons or paintball guns or all this other stuff. And the reason for that was because so this doesn't happen during training when you have the real rifles and you actually are shooting in close proximity to people, particularly people you don't want to kill, people on your team. I had a situation. I won't say a situation, but we were doing paintball stuff, and we're running and we're bounding and doing all these things, and we're being told about like how if you're running, like you flip the safety on and you make sure you're aware where that muzzle's pointing, because you might trip and fall, and if you trip and fall, you're not necessarily going to control what goes into that trigger well, or in your trip and fall, you might actually accidentally set your weapon off. And that can be completely avoided by simply remembering to flip the safety on. And that's really important. And we had some guys who were training who didn't listen to that, because to be honest, the paintball guns we were using, the safety was a pain in the ass to flip on and off. It was there wasn't a quality paintball gun. So they just decided to ignore it. Well, the sergeant who was training us saw that some of these guys were trying to ignore it, and he goes up to the line and to the guy next to me, and I'm just a trainee. I'm not paying attention to what's going on. I'm just doing what they're telling me to do. And he starts kicking him in the hand, and boom, the paintball gun goes off. And then he's kicking him, and he's kicking him, and he's kicking him. And the cadet next to me is like confused. Like they're like is he being funny? Like, what is he doing? And he says, "So you're running without your safety on?" And oh, okay, Sergeant. He's like, "I don't think you understand. You're running without your safety on, and because of the way you maneuvered, Morris here had to cross in front, and you're pointing the gun at him, and you're running behind him without it on safety. So if you had tripped and fell and had an impact like the one I just kicked you with, you very well could have shot a round off and hit Morris in the ass." And I didn't even think about this, like we're doing paintball stuff. I don't feel like I'm in danger. And he just does this down the line. He just goes up and he kicks every one of the cadets who he saw moving without flipping their safeties on. Now that's not the most fundamental thing, but the point is that you have to be very, very, very aware of safety with firearms, whether you're at a range or whether you're actually training for combat. Particularly training for combat, because in combat you don't get big open rooms like you get in the shoot houses. You get things like furniture and other people shooting back at you, and you don't get a guy holding the door for you. If you have to breach a door that's that large, you have to think about these things. And if guys have to cut in front to actually dominate the corners of the room and do things, there's a way you have to move. You don't want your guy moving in front of your muzzle while he crosses, when there could be a bad guy popping out. Because not only do you have a chance to shoot him accidentally in your basically your reaction to a bad guy coming out. Now you've basically, by not operating properly, now you're at risk, because now he's standing in front of you and he's not looking the correct direction and he's not moving in a way that's deliberate to get out of your way. And he gets shot, and you get shot through him because you're standing behind him, or he goes down in the doorway and he blocks what's going on, and now you're all screwed. These guys walked in; they clearly knew exactly where the targets were going to be. It was almost in a dumb way. They put them in a nice, safe position where they were to the left and right of the door that they were going to be going next through, so that everything went nice and easy. That's not how you're supposed to train, and that's not, and to see that being the case, they took the time to basically make it so that it's as least difficult as possible, and then just allowed people to flag themselves, flag each other. These soldiers don't know. The officers, the NCOs, perhaps they don't know either. Perhaps they've been trained like this, and this isn't something that happens overnight. This isn't a bad. Again, this isn't like some lazy National Guard unit or some JROTC that is doing something dangerous. This is the 10th Mountain Division. These guys are supposed to be elite. People compare them to the Rangers, and with good reason. They do something very specialized, and they're supposed to be one of our feared fighting units. And seeing this happen in any training scenario, it's one thing for guys to act irresponsibly and flag each other, or some dangerous things to be done during a training exercise, and then there has to be discipline because they've got adrenaline going, and people don't always make the most rational decisions. In sometimes, and that's why training's dangerous. That's why training with live ammo is dangerous. But that's also why the training's important, so you don't make these mistakes in combat. But to see the sergeants and I assume what would be the commanding officers who observed this training, just this just happened. This is just how they did it. The guy just goes up and casually opens the door, and this would have been unacceptable for a dry run, where they weren't actually firing live ammunition. This was ridiculous to watch, and that means there's some sort of fundamental poison in the military right now for this to actually occur. And if you talk to post 9/11 vets, because we're really past that now. We're 20 years out from 9/11. That got most of, if not I should say the vast majority of guys who signed up post 9/11, who are probably the finest soldiers we ever had. They're gone. They're not. They're in the private sector. They might be doing consulting, or they're just at home doing other jobs. Because 20 you can't do some of these jobs for 20 years. You just can't. That's why the young are recruited. But the guys who are left, who have been given the responsibility, the paychecks, and the power to now train the next generation of soldiers, who are more than 10 years younger than me at this point, well more than 10 years younger than me, they clearly don't know what they're doing. They clearly have been put into positions that they were not ready for, that they did not fundamentally understand, and it's a lot like how generals end up being political appointees, and that ends up causing all kinds of problems. Everything from basically the Vietnam War to protracted engagement in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've had this politicization, and it's happened under the Obama administration, where it first really started ramping up. And we only had about 4 years of that not being the case, and still we weren't really able to recruit back to the levels we had before, and the organizations were very much poisoned. There's still white supremacy training and all this other weird shit, social justicey stuff. The Air Force is more concerned with sexual assault than actually air assault. Not that those things shouldn't be addressed, but it's kind of a joke. It's like they spend more time doing social manipulation rather than the actual social manipulation they should be doing, which is what is the culture of the organization to be as proficient at what they're supposed to do as possible. And now you see something like the 10th Mountain Division put on this display. And the Chinese must think this is hilarious. They didn't have to kill the 10th Mountain Division. They didn't have to go make their own unit that's better than the 10th Mountain Division in both training, equipment, and skill. They just had to, institute the social changes in the United States enough so that organizations like the 10th Mountain Division suffer. This is an organization suffering. Seeing this, while the memes are funny, it's actually really, really disturbing that the 10th Mountain Division would put out such a piss poor performance in any context. That doesn't mean guys who basically are in the 10th, maybe they suck. Maybe they've got a batch of these guys who really need to get their shit together, right? That's fine. You can enter your job sucking. That's okay. But seeing the NCOs and just seeing that this is actually sanctioned suck. This is how it's actually being run. For what's supposed to be an elite unit of the U.S. Army. That's not a fluke. That's a fundamental issue, and we better get to the bottom of it, and we better root it out. Or we're going to be in trouble. because the sword can be as sharp as you want it to be, but if the arm that wields it is incompetent or weak, that sword's not worth anything. And it's the same thing with all our arms and technology, and oh, we got the body armor, and everybody's got their M4s and lasers and awesome optics and all stuff. It doesn't mean anything if the guys who are using it are not trained right. The only people who survive this situation are guys who are able to basically realize what they're doing is bullshit. And do you want to find out in combat that you've been training these guys wrong, and then lose 60% of a unit, and then have 40% of those guys maybe left to then go have to really quickly retro train everybody else? The Navy had this problem. The Navy's in World War II, their tactics, air tactics, were pretty garbage, all things considered. Their equipment wasn't even that good. I mean, they were convinced it was good, but it really wasn't that good. And they got absolutely torn to pieces by the Japanese early in the war in terms of air-to-air combat. It was a disaster. And they had to literally send the guys who figured out how it works back to the States and to the training places and to reteach the entire fundamentals of dogfighting and aerial combat from guys who had now learned this in blood. They watched their buddies die doing it wrong so that they could learn how to do it right. And we had this. This was a problem, and this problem happened again in Vietnam. You got MiG-19 shooting down F-4 Phantoms. You got to be kidding me, right? But they had the same exact cultural rot, and they had the same exact problem where they could have all the best equipment and all this high technology and all the fundamentals and still get your ass absolutely smashed by an enemy who just actually pays attention to basic tactics. All that technology doesn't mean anything. And after Vietnam, after they fixed it and they started building planes that were actually designed to dogfight and also changing their tactics and whatnot, you get things like the school Top Gun. And Top Gun is super demanding, and it's super demanding because being a fighter pilot is super demanding. Well, guess what? Close quarter combat, that's kind of the fighter pilot of at least the infantry, because the closer you get to the enemy, the more likely you have of actually getting killed. This is not, we're engaging targets at 600 meters and closing, and we're using suppressing fire and moving and shifting. All that stuff, you don't have to be an amazing Rambo commando to actually really effectively use unit tactics outside. But in close quarters combat, it's not like that. You have to actually really know what the hell you're doing. Otherwise, you're not getting out of there. And it doesn't matter how poorly trained the enemy is. If there's a guy sitting behind this door and this is how they're clearing the room, one of your guys isn't going home. You're getting shot, and you better learn. You got to check your corners and get the points of dominance in the room. Otherwise, you're going to die. And even if you do, you still might die. Especially if the guys around you are as piss poor trained as what we're seeing here. So, I don't think this can be fixed overnight. This is a problem. This is going to be years and years and years before we get the guys back into a condition where this is unthinkable. I mean, I don't know. Do we need to go back and bring out guys who have been, who served 20 years ago, who actually know what they're doing, and start fundamentally training from the ground up? Possibly. But, I should not be better at close quarters combat than guys at this level of training in the 10th Mountain Division. I'm a nobody. Me having never actually been to a shoot house, I can tell you my survivability in close combat is higher than these guys, based on by seeing what they're doing. And that's not a good thing. I'm a nobody. I'm just a guy who was exposed to the basics of it, and I know what the rules are, and I know how to not flag teammates, and I know how to basically get to the points of domination in a room. And just that little simple bit puts me leagues ahead of these guys. Because if they're not doing something fundamental to close quarters combat, and also fundamental to safety. And it should never get to this point. Accidents should happen, absolutely. What they're doing is dangerous. If accidents aren't happening occasionally, then guess what? Your training probably isn't realistic enough, and that's awful. But it's you have to bleed in training a little bit so that you don't bleed in combat. That's not ideal. It's not saying, oh well, we want people to get hurt. No, of course not. You do everything you can to stop people from getting hurt. But if what you're doing in training isn't fundamentally dangerous on some level, then what's the point of training it? It would be like swimming in a swimming pool to learn to be a swimmer, but then them taking the water out, or only swimming in the shallows. Because, you can't drown in 3 feet of water. Well, yeah, well, you also really can't swim. And these guys, this kind of combat training is very similar to that in that respect. But this is like, this is not how it's done. This is a fundamental breakdown on every level, everyone involved. And I don't blame the guys who are going in, shooting the rifles, doing the stuff that they are doing, what they are trained to be doing. All right, the pointing the guns, they're doing the thing where they're crossing, looking in the doorway. They're in okay positions there, but the way they're crossing and the way the sergeant just walks up and just casually opens the door for them. Okay, I guess you're going in now. That's the kind of thing. Them opening the door is something that, like, maybe on a dry run, like the very first time when nobody's got magazines, nobody even's holding guns, and it's, hold your hands up, and we're not going to worry about flagging this second. I just want to show you kind of the movements of what's going on. So when you open a room, now when you walk in this room, what do you see? Where are the points of dominance? Ignore where the enemies are, ignore where the targets are right now. Where could they be? Did you know what this room was going to look like before you walked into it? What if I opened this door and all of a sudden you were breaching it and it was actually a hallway that went straight down? What are you going to do about that? How do you react to that? Did you stop the stack? Like, what do? You have to know. You have to think about these things. A lot of times, committing to the action and doing it violently and forcefully and getting to those points of dominance is enough to get you out of trouble. Other times, it's not, and you need to know when you got to stop. You got to stop the whole train. Because you don't want to have your guys walking into a room that, there's a dude with a bomb vest in there. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to do that? Is there windows there? Are you going to get shot by a guy who's mounted in the window across the street who can now see clearly into this room? And maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you had reconned around and it looked like the front was obstructed, but now that you've kicked the door open, you see it's not. So what are the points in the room you have to get to worry about these things? Now, nobody's going to be perfect at that. And that's the scary part about close quarters combat, is that's the highest chance you have of getting killed. As an infantryman, close combat, period. This type of stuff, this house-to-house stuff, because this is the, there's a bullet out there with your name on it. Well, this is where you're finding yourself a lot of bullets that could possibly have your name on it because of what you're doing. You're just, some amateur can end a professional's life in a situation like this by complete chance. And there's a lot of things you can do about that, but your card might be called. There might be a 12-year-old with a Glock in there and hiding in some spot that you just fundamentally couldn't see, didn't see. You kick that door open and a grenade's in the room. You don't know. You go in. There's a lot of really bad things that can happen in this. This is serious training. These guys need to learn how to deal with this, and particularly learn how to not shoot each other. And whatever this is not. This is obviously not done by people who, one, have seen combat, two, who actually have been told or studied any sort of tactics. I hear the thing, maybe the NCOs have been told to do it a certain way and they've just given up and they're just doing their job. That's the way they look at it, right? I think that's ridiculous, but maybe it's not the NCO's fault, but at the very least, like, if you're an officer and you witnessed this was how your guys in your platoon were training. You should in your head be saying, even if that's, maybe there's nothing on the books about what you're supposed to do, and maybe your higher ups don't care, but you should care enough and know enough to know that this is not how you want your guys training, because you're going to be taking them home in body bags, and in fact, you're probably going to die too, because you're going to be depending on these guys for your safety and your mission objectives, and if they suck like this, you're you're an officer. You're probably gonna get killed. Just from being around whatever this is, and you might just get killed in training because these guys seem to have absolutely no idea or no care at all about where they're pointing their rifles. Oh, you point it towards the enemy. Okay. When your guys are crossing, what do you do? In this, apparently, you just keep pointing like it's Call of Duty, where your gun is always up and you can't. That always annoyed me that in FPS games, especially when you have to talk to somebody who's friendly, and then you go up to them, and then like you're listening and looking at them, and you're looking at their face move, and the gun is just like pointing right in their head, and you're like, oh, that's that's an awkward conversation, you know. Some games do it where like the gun gets lowered. I think Modern Warfare did that. I don't know if they still do that, but like I always loved that. But this is like this is a joke. This looks like I guess this would be acceptable for a paintball team because I guess if you're a paintball team, shooting your buddy in the back is more funny than tragic. But this is not okay for. I've seen militias that are better tasked with clearing a structure than what these guys were just taught and what they just demonstrated. So we got to get to the bottom of this kind of stuff because if this is what we're seeing here, this type of rot is everywhere. I would be concerned about our naval training. I would be concerned about our air combat training. This is the kind of thing where they force these units to promote people based on basically political ideologies, and then all of a sudden you start seeing garbage like this. And this, I suspect, is what's probably happened to the 10th Mountain Division. Again, more effective. This is a gift to the Chinese. This is a gift to them. I mean, I said this is what, late December, this video? Yikes. I mean, that's... so, I don't know. That's me coming back, shooting shit a little bit. This is a problem. This is a major problem, and if it does not get addressed, we're gonna get crushed. We're gonna get crushed. Everybody thinks that the size of your military is what makes it powerful. Not the size. The money you spend on it is what makes it powerful. No, that's not the case. Why the Spartans beat the Athenians, and they didn't have nearly the amount of money to spend or the manpower that the Athenians did, and that's not how this works. And the Chinese, they you used to go to sleep comfortably knowing that they were kind of everything. They would have the latest of whatever equipment, but it would always be Chinese manufactured. So you would always like, the quality's not going to be there. And you see the training, and you're like, oh, they're trying really hard, and they really want to emulate us, but they really don't have the special sauce. So it kind of gives us that edge, and they've always been jealous of it. I see this, and it's like the special sauce is gone. This is by far worse than anything I've seen come out of the Chinese. And I've seen them, if you look up some videos of Chinese grenade training, there's some poor practices, to say the least. This is actually worse than that. So, that's all. Wish I had better things to talk about, but I don't want to get into some of the other stuff that's happening. I got a video strike, or I had a video removed, and I think it came with a channel strike, because I told the truth about what happened with the election. I told the truth, or I should say rather, even if you don't want to say it's true, I had an opinion about what we witnessed, and that is unacceptable to YouTube. And I'm not even going to have to say it here, because you know what that opinion is. And if it were not true, they would not need to censor it. And we know this. This is really, it's not up to debate anymore, I don't think. If it wasn't the truth, they would not feel compelled to go to the level that they've gone to suppress that from coming out. It's bad, guys. We're in deep shit, and it's not just videos getting deleted on social media or Silicon Valley being a bunch of globalist pricks. This is our army. These are the guys who are supposed to defend us, and this bullshittery, this lack of quality, because whether you want to say it's social justice or whatever the hell it is that's rotting us from the inside out. This isn't America. This isn't the America I want. This isn't the America I even grew up in. And I'm a post Clinton kid, I guess, or I was a little kid during Clinton, but I grew up when we started having trouble, and this is by far the worst. I should say the most foreign this country has ever felt to me is right now. We lose the military. We lose the military. We lose the ability to protect ourselves. The sharks are going to come out. And do I think we can win a protracted war? Yeah, I do think we can. Seeing this, I don't think we can win one without losing a million people. I don't want the enemy to even think that they can win a fight with us. Even contemplate it. Seeing this video, if I was a small-time terrorist organization, I would be saying, they're not really as tough as we're told they are. Particularly if you're the Chinese, you see this, you're just like, wow, we destroyed the 10th Mountain Division's effectiveness, and we didn't fire a shot. We just had to culturally rot them from the inside out, and eventually this is what happened. So